stand at the front, have a kind of a look around occasionally. Oh my word, we've got some handsome people in today. We've got some, and we've got Cass as well. So I want to joke. It's good to see every single one of you. Right. Numbers 10. We'll read from Numbers 10. And it says this. It says, the Lord said to Moses, make 2 trumpets of hammered silver and use them for calling the community together and for having the camp set out. When both are sounded, the whole community is to assemble before you at the entrance to the tent of meeting. If only one is sounded, the leaders, the heads of the clans of Israel are to assemble before you. When a trumpet blast is sounded, the tribes belonging to the east are to set out. At the sound of the second blast, the tribes on the south are to set out. The blast will be a signal for setting out. To gather the assembly, blow the trumpets, but not with the same signal. The sons of Aaron, the priests, are to blow the trumpets. This is to be a lasting ordinance for you and the generations to come. When you go into battle in your own land against an enemy who is oppressing you, sound a blast on the trumpets. Then you will be remembered by the Lord your God and rescued from your enemies. Also at your times of rejoicing, also your appointed feasts, your new moon festivals, you are to sound the trumpets over your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and they will be a memorial for you before the Lord. I am the Lord your God. Okay, great passage of scripture. And as we as a house are looking at our core values, believing, belonging, becoming, this is unashamedly about belonging today. And I'll explain why. Part of our culture as well, if you like, is we've got 4 words that we use. We use purpose, relationship, excellence and passion to govern how we do what we do. The purposes are to save people from sin, to break down the works of the evil one, and to release people into their gifting. The relationship is about connecting people with God, with each other, and with the house of God. In our excellence, it's in our attention to detail, it's in our ambitions and our attitudes and our actions, and our passion is in our time, talent and treasure, and in the fact that everyone carries, everyone cares, and everyone contributes. That's all written down. It's on the website if you're quite new. We welcome you all if it's your first time here today. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those 4 words and put them into the scriptural context. And it's about building community today. These silver trumpets are quite interesting, because if you read through those first books, they're making all sorts of stuff. They're making tabernacles, they're making tables for the bread, they're making lampstands, and they're making all sorts of things. And it was all about the temple, the holy place of God, making and building that. But here, the 2 trumpets, they had nothing to do with the temple of God. These trumpets were purely about community, about the people of God. And God, even in all these other things, He realised that you can have a great temple, but you've got to have community as well. And this is something that I'm really strong on, and I think that we need to work towards and pray towards, is the fact that we don't just want a great celebration on Sunday, we have to build a community. We have to build a community. And that's what it's about. And just interesting hearing the word of God today, coming through, that God has no plan B. It's plan A. You are God's plan A. You know, for your family, for your friends, for your where you've been put, you are plan A. God's not got a backup plan for you. Not like a game of football. God's not going to hold your number and bring you off and then put someone else on in your place. You are plan A. There is no plan B. There wasn't an accident when Jesus ended up getting crucified for us. That was God's plan A. That He would give His life for the salvation of our sin. That was plan A. God only works in plan A. There is some strategies that talk about other things, but it isn't. It's wrong. God has plan A. And God's plan for the world, for the redemption of the world through the death of His Son, was through the church. The church is plan A. There's no substitute for the local church. Now there's other things that we can get involved in that are good things, like community groups. We can look at God TV, well not necessarily God channels, religious channels, and they can help us, but they are not God's plan A. And lots of people think they could be. There's books, there's systems, there's tapes. It's not God's plan A is that the manifest wisdom of God is made known through his church. That's plan A. And we've got to focus on plan B. And all these other things will not save people, will not connect them to their destinies. There's lots of good things out there to help homeless people, to help people in alcohol and drug awareness and things like that. And we thank God for them. But they are not plan A. God's plan A for Peterborough is the church. Amen. So we've got to focus on that. And as we focus on the community, there's no plan B. If we don't get this community thing right, there's no plan B. I suppose if you wanted to look for one, it was just that we'd be a group of people meeting together on a Sunday, making a great noise unto God. But it's got to be more than that. We cannot walk past homeless people, destitute people, people whose lives have been broken and ruined and wrecked, the people we see at work or in our social places, and say, your life's in a mess, and plan A for your life is Jesus through the church, but I can't help you. That's the option. There is no plan B. We are that plan A. We are that plan A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about those 4 words: purpose, relationship, excellence and passion. And I'm going to link it into these trumpets. Going to be done. So if you're taking notes, I'll try and give you the pointers to help you make sense of it. So the first thing I want to look at, one of the 4 reasons why the trumpets were sounded was to call people to battle. Now, how many people in this room, in their personal lives, private lives, work lives, any part of their life, have been through a battle? How many of us have been through a battle? Oh, yeah, I see that hand. Get this on camera. I see this hand. No, I'm kidding. I thought I was Billy Graham for a minute then. But yeah, we've all been through battles, haven't we? We've all been through tough times. And I don't know about you, but I don't know if you've ever seen the films of battles on television. They make it so manly, don't they? They make it look so good. Have you ever seen Braveheart? Yeah. It's a great film. If you've not seen Braveheart, because the Scots get beaten in the end, sorry now, but the Scots get beaten in the end. Or Gladiator, or any of these films. And they try and make it look fantastic, don't they, this battle. But the problem is with battles, people get injured, people get hurt. And what strikes me, and the battling we're looking at is going to link with our keyword passion. Have you ever seen, in any of those films or any battles, have you ever seen a passionless soldier? Have you ever seen somebody who's standing on his sword and say, I don't care whether they win or not. I don't care if he chops my head off. No, there's always a passion, there's whatever. Because it's battle, it's warfare. And the reason for it is, one, if you're not passionate about it, you're going to get injured. And I think sometimes we can reflect that in church. If we're not passionate, if we're not serving God wholeheartedly, as the Old Testament says, we could get injured. They say in football, actually, if you don't tackle wholeheartedly, actually by going in half strength, you're more likely to get injured than if you go in fully, because you might leave something to get kicked or injured. But it's like this in battle. No passionless army have ever won anything. And yet, God's plan A, the church, our guiltiness is sometimes I don't think we are passionate enough about what we're doing. We can get passionate and fight for so many things, can't we? And none of these are bad things. Please don't think I'm railing against them. But I heard someone say, I had to fight for my business in this current economic climate. A business is worth fighting for. But it doesn't stand much or mean much on the day you die. No one on the day they die says, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. You just don't do it. Why? Because it's a value that even though we fight for it, the value of it is not as high as it could be. We fight for fame and fortune. We're in a current climate at the moment where everybody wants to be famous. You see shows like Big Brother. I can't understand that. Why would you watch somebody in their front room on telly when you're sitting in the front room watching telly? So you're sitting in the front room watching somebody sitting in their front room. Or worse still, you want to turn it over so you have an argument, and so you're having an argument while the telly's on, watching an argument. It just gets worse and worse. But there's this desiring 15 minutes of fame or fortune. I want my face on a magazine. I want to earn money and be successful in the eyes of the world. Do you know there's an ever-increasing trend now that's called lottery suicides? People who've won millions of pounds, you think that's the answer to their life. And yet more and more of those people are committing suicide. Very sadly. We fight for the good things in life. Well, I want a 52-inch plasma television. I can remember, actually, I'll be a bit covetous. I can remember the day I went into a shop in Milton Keynes and I saw a 32-inch television. Now, I never had a 32-inch television before. It was always 21-inch, and when I was watching ice hockey or football, you kind of, where's the ball? And the reason is, I'm not going to... This is a fact. The reason we couldn't have it, it's one of these, there's another preaching story in this. The reason we never went bigger is because the television cabinet could only fit a 21-inch television in it. So the television size was restricted by the cabinet. Sometimes our lives can be restricted by the cabinet. No, that's not there. But you know the preaching analogy there. But I went into this shop, and there it was, gleaming at me. 32-inch flat screen. And I said, can I have that television? She said, yes. And we talked it through. And then she asked quite a daft question. Do you want ProLogic surround sound as well? I said, get it in the back of your van. Get it in the back of your van. And of course, this telly was being delivered, and I probably was a little bit heartless and a little bit brutal. Because when it was being wheeled in, Jill looked at the television cabinet, she looked at the telly coming in, she knew there was a problem. But I got kind of that expression, I don't care. I've got my telly. The fact that I'm hugging it as it's coming in the door kind of told her that was going nowhere. But we all want the good things in life. But you know the funny thing about a telly, my 32-inch ProLogic surround sound telly that I like so much, 2 months later I went in the same shop and there's a 40-inch, all singing and dancing Nikon 5.1 surround sound. Better than the telly I just bought. So I said to her, well, why didn't you tell me about this one when I came? Well, this one's just come in. Well, can I sell the telly I've got? No, it's not worth anything. Why not? Because the 40-inch is out now. So all that I thought was worthwhile and valuable was actually worthless because something better came out. We can fight for the good things in life, and that's not a bad thing. But something better will always come along to replace it, and we'll never satisfy a desire for good things. We want to be recognised, we want our rights, we want position and reputation, and we fight for these things. But to put a blunt point on it, the day we die, those things count for nothing. No one's going to stand here and look over my coffin and say, Tim Bedward-Jones, pastor, preacher, owner of a 32-inch surround sound ProLogic television. No one's going to do it. It's not going to happen. What is it that we are fighting for? What are we passionate about? Let's be really honest. Have we got a passion for souls? Are we battling for souls? Do we realise the significance of the eternal well-being of our friends and our neighbours and our families are dependent on us, plan A? Do we do battle? Are we passionate about that? Does it kind of annoy us when we hear of stories of people's lives being affected and broken? Because the problem with the other stuff that I talked about, sometimes that can anaesthetise us, desensitise us. I think it was to Simon the other day. You see these adverts on telly at the moment for starving kids in Africa. And my heart is, you know how much I'm passionate about things like that. But the problem is with the adverts, I've seen so many, an advert comes on television and I'm eating my tea and it's not going in anymore. Because I've seen so much that I've kind of become desensitised. Whereas 20 years ago that broke my heart and it still breaks my heart. But there's something in the way we portray it, it just doesn't grab us anymore. It's the same with the church when we hear about souls and stuff like that. We think, yeah, somebody else will do it. They can put 580 on the God channel, that'll save them. That'll be fantastic. We are plan A. We are God's plan. So do we get passionate about souls? As a church, are we passionate? Do we get passionate when we hear of people getting saved? Does it really pump us? Should we kind of plan that every week we have a celebration when somebody gets saved? Because this is why we're in business, this is why we're here. You know, do we fight for our family and friends? I heard a story from a guy called Dave Cartledge, who's no longer with us, he's gone to glory. And he ran a Bible college in Australia. And his son was into drugs and he was lost and broken. And his son used to come in at 3 or 4 in the morning oblivious to everything in the world, and just collapse on a bed and be like in a coma for 6 hours because of the lifestyle he was living. And one day, to cut a long story short, the son came back to Jesus miraculously, gave his life, and he's going on with God today. Fantastic little story. And somebody said to David Carledge, what do you do for that to happen? And he said, well, you can't make it happen, but one thing I'll tell you is, I used to pray in his bedroom every single night. And he used to stagger in and collapse, and I still used to pray. And I used to pray until I was hoarse and couldn't speak in the morning. Why? Because he was passionate about it. He was passionate that one day his son would come back to Jesus. And yet we can be guilty sometimes of having passionless Christianity. I don't know about you. There's one thing that gets me going, I get passionate about, is my kids. I'm made that way, a lot of us are, of course. That's what fathers and mothers do, we get passionate. If somebody bullies my kids, I'm annoyed. I'll go in. If I think my kids have been unfairly treated at school or victimised, I'm like, let me get down there, let me sort. Yeah, we all would, wouldn't we? Yeah. And there's some mothers and fathers in the house this morning. I would hate to be a teacher getting on the wrong end of some of you guys, because I know how passionate you can be, and it's right, it's the way it should be. So if our kids are marked down at school and they shouldn't be, we'll get annoyed. If they're bullied at school, we'll get annoyed. If they're excluded for any reason, whether that be religious, racial, behavioural, if our kids are excluded, we'll get annoyed. We'll be down at school. And yet, do we get annoyed when we think about their eternal welfare? Do we get passionate when we think about their soul and their eternity and where they're going to spend their lives? We need to be passionate about the next generation. And it's not just about me bearing for my kids. It's about us as a house standing together. And when there's hearts that are breaking, and when there's people that are struggling, we need to stand with them and get passionate. This is their kids. This is our God. Let's connect them together. Because that's what community does. And if we can't get passionate about our own kids and our own young people and our own Sunday school, we're going to miss a point. We're going to miss something that God's doing. We really do need to pay attention to our kids in the youth work. We've got 1 man, 2, 3 women. No, it's 1 man, 2 women in the youth. We've got 5 volunteers in our Sunday school. We've got to get passionate about the next generation. If there's something worth fighting for, it's our next generation. It's our kids. Are we passionate about a full heaven? That we get to heaven one day and we meet Peter at the gates and we stand there and he, all the time he's talking to us, he's saying, I'm sorry, just got to admit some new admissions. Oh, sorry, I've just heard there's a party going on because there's some new people got saved today. Are we committed to heaven being a full place, or heaven just being for those that make it? Those that were fortunate enough to come into a Bible preaching church, hear the gospel and make a response. There's no plan B. The church is plan A for heaven. So that's the first question. The trumpet is sounding for battle. Corinthians 14:8 says, who will go to battle if the trumpet call is not clear? Are our lives sounding a clear trumpet call? You see, I'm no trumpeter, but from my army training and background, I know that there's certain trumpet calls that mean certain things. There's reveille, isn't there? Who's been in the army? Oh, a couple of them. So, get out of bed, in other words. Otherwise, a big sergeant major is going to come to you and say, excuse me, sir, would you like to come on to parade? No. Get up, parade! And then they come out. And there's the last post, sadly, which is played to commemorate a fallen soldier. And there's lots of different things. But if your trumpet player got drunk, could you imagine that? And he stood on parade, he was on, and everybody's like, what's going on here? Do we salute, stand to attention, go to war? What do we do? It's like that as Christians. If our lives don't sound a clear trumpet call, how are people in the world going to know what to do? How are they going to know about our Saviour? How are they going to know about God's plan A for their life? If we're trying to work out between plan B and D, which one we should be doing? Okay. So plan A, call to battle. Secondly, Here we go. They sounded the trumpet call when it was time to set out. Now, if you study the Old Testament, you'll realise what the Israelites did in a whistle-stop history tour was they camped around the presence of God, the temple, the tabernacle. The tabernacle of God, the Holy of Holies. That was in the middle. The Levites and the priests were immediately around them, and then you had the 12 tribes, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, around that. But what happened when the cloud of the presence of God got up and moved, there was an order that some of the Levites would go in, take the holy objects, the others would take the coverings, and the others would take the framework. Then in order the tribes would set out, the Levites that had got responsibility for the holy things, they went last, because everyone could set up the camp and they could bring the holy objects in and set them straight up. It's a very logistic plan. But basically, when God moved, so did they. They didn't have people saying, oh, God's moving again, I'm not. Do you know what, I'm going to stay here in the desert. I'm not following that cloud anymore. It says that sometimes the cloud could be resident for years, for a year, or months on end. Sometimes it could be just days. Can you imagine that? They'd set up and done all this, and pitched it. I don't know how many like camping here. Oh, that's good. Well, there's a few. I can't do camping. I can't. It's one of them things that I think if I'm ever that bad, if I ever had to go to hell, there'd be somebody saying, oh, it's not so bad. Look, it's sunny here. But here's your camping. Here's your tent for all eternity. That would be enough for me. I'd repent instantly. I can't be doing camping. I've got so many negative experiences where I haven't got time to go in. But can you imagine one of them campsites? It's like they were setting up the whole camp and the presence of God and the tabernacle. And then, can you imagine the same day, if the cloud had removed, oh no, we've got to go again. Get the tent pegs up, get the mallets, and off they went. Moving house. I was just sitting there. In the last 3.5 years, I've probably moved 7 times. For one reason or another. And do you know what? It's a pain. Carly, she moved. Just like that. It's a pain taking all your belongings, packing them up, moving somewhere else. Why do we move? Why bother? Why don't we stay in the same? Why isn't there a law that says you stay in the same house all your life? Wouldn't that be easier? No, because you have a 2-bedroom house because you've got a wife and a child. If your family grows, you need something bigger. You need to move. And the thing is, if you're living in a house in an area and you've got a job somewhere else, you need to move rather than commuting 300 miles. What if you're in a house with a backyard, but when you have children you want some grass in your garden, you move to a house with a garden? Shall I tell you why we move? We move because there's something better for us. Nobody goes through the pain and the hassle of moving house for any other reason that actually there's something better there for me. Whether that's financial, whether that's our location, whether it's the schools, whether it's nearer to work. There's always a reason that makes it better. That's why we want to move. And God knew that. We can move for comfort, we can move for jobs, we can move to be near a family, we can move for 101 reasons. But as a congregation, as a people of God, why should we move? Why should we be prepared to set out? And this call to set out links with purpose. Because you see, there's no reason for moving if we don't have a purpose. I'll be really blunt and honest with you. We can stay in this building for the next 100 years and it's going to be fine. But what will happen is we won't see lots of new people coming in. We won't see the area affected. We won't see a growth in children's work because of the facilities we've got. We were talking this morning, we need a prayer room. We can't increase the prayer covering because room to do that is very limited and it's very busy. For our youth work, if we had an extra 50 people, this place would be rammed. If everyone who called PICC home came on a Sunday morning, there wouldn't be enough seats or rooms to contain them. So even though we want everyone to come on Sunday, the truth is we can't fit them all in. So even though it's nice and comfortable, we've got to be ready to move. Yeah. With the pain and the discomfort and the hassle that brings. Another thing, if we were moving house, and you came around my house on one of the days I was moving, and I sat with my feet up watching Sky Sports, and nothing was packed, you'd say, although you want to move, I don't think you're going anywhere today. You've done no preparation, there's no van book, there's nothing. You'll stay where you always are. And sometimes in church we say we want to move to something better, something bigger, and yet we're not doing the preparation and the purposes that are required to put us in a position where we can move. Why do people move? Why do we as a church move? Because of the purposes of God. The reason I moved 7 times in 3.5 years was not for fun, it was because I was following what God wanted me to do. And that's why I moved to Peterborough. I didn't move to Peterborough and then somebody had a conversation, why didn't you join PICC? It was a strategic move that I wanted to be here to follow the purposes of God with all the people gathered here. You know, sometimes God positions people because he has a plan. We believe that, don't we? And yet if we're not prepared to move, you look at Philip in the New Testament, God had to physically move him incredibly. Because one minute he's talking to an Ethiopian in the desert, baptising him, and God said, I need you somewhere else. So he had to strategically replace him somewhere else. It's a strategy. And the thing is, we've got to find our position in God. And to find our position, we sometimes need to reposition ourselves to where God wants us to be. Setting out. Part of our purpose is, you know, our plans and research into new buildings, and there's some options that are coming up. There's some things on our horizon. But I know for a fact, unless we're prepared to setting out, unless we're prepared to hear the call and say, well, we'll do whatever it takes to facilitate that, we won't be going anywhere. And I think, without being too harsh, I think if we'd gone to the Broadway at the time we wanted to, it would have killed us. I did some work this week about if we were to have Broadway or another venue that wasn't our own, how many people would we need, minimum, to make church work on a Sunday? The answer I came up with, and I can show you through it if you want, if you're really interested, was that I need a team of 52, 24 of which have to be on duty at any one given week. Now the good news is we've got some of those people. We've got about 12 or 14 of those people. The bad news is some of those positions people are doubling up and doing 2 or 3 jobs and running around to make things work. But I know we need a minimum of 24 people. Now that's 24 people who will get there at 9:30 and get cracking with the jobs to prepare. Why? Not for their own comfort, but so that we may prepare a house suitable enough for new people to come into and meet Jesus for themselves. That's why we do it. And to be honest, it's more comfortable to not do it at all. But are we called for comfort or are we called for purpose? Are we called just to camp in the desert for 40 years, or are we called to follow the cloud of God, the presence of God, and what God wants for us? And the challenge will be, if something came up on our horizon that was definite, that was a new facility for us, or a rental facility, as a stepping stone, or whatever, unless we have a team that are committed to make it work, all this stuff doesn't set up itself. All the chairs don't line up automatically. There's not a kind of a magic pen where all the chairs are put away and you tap the pen and all the chairs get off. A bit like Fantasia. You've seen Mickey Mouse Fantasia, and all the chairs just automatically go into rows. And it takes people working, committing. And with a church of over 200 people who call it home, unless we had a minimum of 24, we won't be moving anywhere. But it's that commitment to say, hey, you know what, I can make a cup of tea, I can straighten chairs, I can drive a minibus, I can welcome people, I can go into a car park and make sure people are welcome there, I can steward and keep fire exits clear. We need to build a team. Not a team of people who get here at 10:30, quarter to 11, 11 o'clock, but a team of people who say, you know what, if this is worth doing, it's worth doing well. We'll meet together and pray at 9:30. We'll set up the house of God. And bear in mind, it might not be here. It might be somewhere else. We'll set up the house of God and we'll make it suitable for people to find Jesus. But that only comes when we understand the purposes of God. If we understand the purpose God has for us, we'll do everything to make that happen. If our purpose is to be comfortable and content, it's never going to happen. So let's take that as a challenge. And again, we can say, well, okay, I'll deal with that and commit to that when I see the new building, when I see what God's got for us. But actually, the people of Israel didn't do that. They didn't say, we're going to get up and follow God when we know where He's going to take us. They just knew that when God was moving, they needed to follow. And that's my call today, is let's not wait for something new before we commit to the house, before we get involved, before we get serious. Let's do it now and get prepared for when it is going to happen. And the sooner we do it, the more confident we'll be in launching out into what God has got for us. And there's some things on the horizon, but my fear, I'll be really honest, I'll just use Broadway as an example. If somebody threw us the keys of the Broadway and said it's there, forget the finances, it's yours, could we run Sunday in there? Would we have enough volunteers? Or would there be people running to the car park, running outside, and same people making the cups of tea, and a 1,000-seat auditorium stewarded by one person running around? We've got to get ready to reposition ourselves for when God moves, and God will move. And I think this is my biggest fear, not as a pastor but as a Christian, and for every one of us. If God gets up and starts moving, are we ready to follow? Or are we going to say, God, not today, I'm not ready, just give us a week, let's get ready, Lord, let's get a new drum kit or something. The Bible's full of stories of people like that. Lord, just let me get married, just let me bury my father, just let me, I've just bought a new field. Let's be ready. Let's be ready when God says it's time to move. And my promise to you is I'm not going to do anything wild and impulsive, but I'm just going to listen to God. And as leaders, we're going to listen to God. And when He says it's time to move, it's time to move. The worry as a leader is, well, what if we leave people behind? But are we frightened of people, or are we answerable to God? And I don't want anybody in the sound of my voice, anybody who's not here, anybody who sees it, catched up on the podcast, is when God says it's time to move, let's all move together, let's be ready, let's have the teams prepared. You know, when God moved, you read the stories of the Levites, they all had different jobs, what they were going to carry, where they were going to take it, how they were going to pack it, what they were going to pack it. It's all in the Bible. We need that similar preparation of when God calls us to move. Who's going to do what? How is it going to happen? And it didn't just happen by accident when God suddenly moved one day. They were ready. We need to be ready. We need to be ready to set out. Okay, so that's battle. We need passion. Setting out, we need a purpose. Third thing that they did was they blew the trumpets when it was time to assemble. When it was time to assemble. Now, those of a British culture will know the word assembly. Basically, it was a time when you used to gather in your school hall, sit cross-legged, which was very uncomfortable for a guy like me. Your bum used to go numb. So when you got up from being cross-legged and went back to your classroom, you're kind of walking like this because your leg's gone dead. And the teacher would slap you around the back of the head in those days and say, stop walking like a silly boy. And but that was assembly. The teachers used to talk about fishing stories or all sorts of stuff to bring the school together. It was the assembly. They have them now, but they're different. They're quite nice. And but assembly, we are called an Assembly of God Church. Okay? I have to do that, just in case John Partington, our national leader, is watching. An Assembly of God. Assembly means to join people together, to gather people together. So they used to use a trumpet to assemble people together. Now, that word assembly has got a second meaning. Okay? The two are related. And it's the word that I dread when I buy something from a shop, like a wardrobe or a bookcase, and it has the words self-assembly on the front. Do you know what that word means? Pain. Pain and suffering. That's what that means. Okay. And some of you will know that feeling. As a man, you've got your screwdriver, you've got all the bits. Now as men, we don't read the instructions. That's not what we do. But when we do, I tried to read one set, they were printed upside down, back to front in Japanese. I had no chance. So you've got your screwdriver, you're trying to work this out. You think you've got it, so you've got a box created, you get it all done, you spend about 3 hours, then you realise the shelf's going upside down and it's all wrong, so you have to start again. Self-assembly. I'm blessed because my wife loves doing things like that. She can do things I cannot. And I get so impatient. She'll get home and say, why are there bits of cabinet strewn across the floor? And she knows that I've given it an hour and it's like, no, that's it. It's of the devil. I'm walking away. And she'll patiently and slowly she'll get it right. But assembly, self-assembly. In other words, you've got to build it yourself. And it's horrible. But that's the second meaning. When we use the word assembly, we assemble ourselves. The reason we assemble ourselves is because we need to build something. That's why we assemble ourselves. We don't just meet together for our health, although we like it. We enjoy being together. We assemble because we need to build something. We need to assemble ourselves together so that we can build the house of God. That's the first thing we do. We've got to build this house of God. It's not going to happen by accident. And as we've said earlier in some of the other comments we've made, it's not going to happen by us being comfortable and by focusing on the wrong things. We have got to be planted in the house of God, Psalms tells us, and be committed to seeing the house of God grow in the fact that new people come to Him. That's the thing. Or new people give their lives to Christ. It's got to be through new growth. But we've got to have that commitment to build the house of God. That's why we get together. And you see, a lot of churches have lost the focus of building a house of God together rather than building their own club. There's a difference between the house of God and a club. A club, you collect your memberships, you appoint a committee, and you run it to keep everybody happy. That's what a club is. And a lot of churches become clubs because they appoint a committee and they run it so that it makes everybody happy. A church is the only organisation that exists for the benefit of people who are not members. It's about people who are not yet in the house of God. That's why we exist, and it's the difference between the house of God and the club. And we've got to see that built into our lives, built into our culture. The second thing we build, as we assemble together, is each other. That's the idea, we build each other. As iron sharpens iron. It's not just my job to build you, it's your job to build me. It's your job to build others. That's why we emphasise small groups, that's why we're going to do some work on them and relaunch them. Because that's a great opportunity to be built by others, but also to use your life to build into the lives of others. People aren't going to, I was telling Isaac, he said, what makes the plants grow? And I was talking about water and sunshine. And it's like that in the Church of God. If we deprive them of the light of God and the water of the Word and just that fellowship together, people aren't going to grow. And we need to build each other. And if that means, you say, well, I don't particularly get a lot out of small groups, but actually I'll go there to build into the life of someone else. You'll find you get blessed. The third one is an interesting one, to build the reputation of God. You might think, oh, hold on a minute, Pastor. God's bigger than anything like that. God's massive. You can't build God. The Bible word uses the word magnify. Now, when you magnify something, you don't make it any bigger because it's the same size. But what you do is you use a magnifying glass and it makes it look bigger. As I'm getting older, I can't read the small print anymore. So whether I go glasses, but I'm too vain to do that, or whether I get a magnifying glass, I need something to make it look bigger. And sometimes when people can't see something, they need something or somebody to make it look bigger. As a church, we're committed to making God bigger for people who've not found Him yet. As we magnify Him, we're not making God any bigger than He is. We can't do that. But actually, in what we build, do we make God more accessible? Do we make God visible for all to see? Yeah. Are we committed to doing that? Again, I know this is a little bit harsh in places, but Christian tradition sometimes is we actually try and make God smaller. Why do we do that? So He can fit in our nice little boxes. Our work box, well, we don't have God in there, do we? Our social box, well, we can have God in there. Church box. And we try and we wonder when we come to open the box and get God out and say, God, why can you heal the sick? And God's like, well, you've squashed me so much, I can't do anything anymore. We need God to be God. And we need to release Him and build Him. And instead of pushing Him down and making Him smaller to fit into the areas of our lives, we just need to let Him loose. Let God be God. And then in our lives, just live them in such a way that people who may not have seen God before suddenly see this magnified God. Wow, is that the God you serve? Is that what God's done in your life? I want to know that God. I want to connect with Him for myself. That's about relationships. Assemblies, bringing people together, building, it's about the relationships that we form. That's why relationship is so important. Because we can't build on our own. You know, my little daughter Bethany, she's 20 now. and she won't thank me for saying this, so I hope she doesn't see the podcast, is when she was about 5, she used to have her own assemblies at home. And how many of you know you can't have assembly with one person? And she kind of worked that out, because she couldn't be the teacher and the recipient, because there was only one of her. So she used to get all the teddy bears. And one day I opened the conservatory curtains, and there in the conservatory were chairs and lines upon lines of little toys. And Bethany's talking about something, and I could see it, and then I saw her stop and said, "Excuse me," she went as a 5-year-old, "who's talking? I'll find you." And it was just like a teacher. Oh, she won't thank me for saying that. She's 20 now, she'll break my back. But you can't have an assembly on your own. It's got to be with relationships. We can't build the house of God. You might say, "Pastor, it's your job to build the house." It's our job. Together, we've got to build the house together. And building each other. With all the best will in my heart in the world, I can't build everyone in the house. And as we grow, I certainly can't do it. It's incumbent on each and every one of us to be part of the building team, to build into the lives of others. So, we've got battle with passion, setting out with purpose, assembling with relationship, and the last one, the last reason they used the trumpets, was to celebrate. Hey, come on. I can see people waking up now. Celebrate? Party? Where? Well, yeah, we're called to party. And the biggest celebration in Israel culture was that of Passover, which was, we've talked about this before, but it was the blood on the doorposts, and the judgment of God passed over them. But it was a picture of when the blood of Jesus is figuratively spilt onto our lives, then the judgment of God on each one of us, he passes over us. Yeah. So it was a sign and a picture of Jesus and his death on the cross. So we're called to celebrate it. That's why we gather together. That's why we need a party. There's so many, 101 things we can do in church, and they're all good, every single one of them. But one of the main focuses is around this table, to celebrate what God has done for us. You know, you might come in and say, "Well, I don't fancy singing today." Well, it's tough because it's not about you. I don't fancy worship. Well, it's not about you. It's if Jesus has died and done all that he said he's done for each and every one of us, that's worth celebrating. No matter how we feel, no matter what kind of week we've had, no matter who we are, how important we think we are, or how low we think we are, he is worthy of our praise. All that he's done. And we've got to prioritise that. And that's why I love our worship team and their commitment to set up. Because they want to celebrate Jesus. They want to help us celebrate all that God has done for us. And we want to know that we're a church that loves that. A second source of celebration is family. When we have family, we have celebration. There's always a birthday. There's always something going on. I want to build into our culture, our community culture, that we need to find more reasons to party. Now, we've got the 6 summer sizzlers going on, and we hang loosely different occasions on those. But isn't it great when we get together? There's people who hold, we're not mentioning names, but there's people who, when they host a party, hundreds of people come. Hundreds of people, they just come out from everywhere, neighbours and stuff. I'm sure there's people who don't even know anybody that just wander in because they think it's some sort of railway station, there's so many people going into the house. But let's find more reasons to celebrate. There's so many things in our world and in our lives that we can get depressed and down about, isn't there? And I'm not demeaning them, I'm not putting them down, I'm not making light of them. But surely there's more reasons to celebrate and party. When we do prayer and praise reports, we do a lot of praying for people, that's great. But we need more praise reports. And surely in a church of 200 odd, there's people who've got something that they can thank God for. But it needs to be part of our culture. That says, you know, I want to thank God for that. Might not be big, might not be mind-blowing, but actually I want to thank God for it. This is the place to do it. I was going to say let's have more weddings, but because we've done 2 in the last 2 weeks, we probably need a break. But hey, let's have more weddings. Let's celebrate those. In fact, me and Pastor Dave were talking, because they've changed the rules and regulations, we can have a wedding as part of the Sunday morning service if we want to. How's that for a challenge? Who's single in the house this morning? Come on, let's you're not single. You're not single. Well, we need to find some single people we'll have a wedding.
Are you single?
Hopefully with people you like, but it's not important. Dedicating children. Oh, there is one single person. Well, we need to find a single man then. Sorry, no, I'll do that later. But we've got to rededications of children. Let's do that, let's party. People say about renewal of vows and their promises in weddings. Whatever. Let's celebrate life together. You know, there's these statistics that tell us how many people, I think it's 45% of married couples divorce. That's sad. That's really sad. But why don't we as Christians celebrate the 55% that stay together? Let's celebrate marriage. That's why I had no problems when John and Joyce, we celebrated that. Was it 40 years married? Sorry, 30, sorry. I know you got married very young, Joy. I know you got very, very young. And I went on Mary's 20th wedding last year. A different thing, let's celebrate them. Let's find reasons to gather together and say, thank you, Jesus, for what you are doing. And also, do you know the Bible talks about parties? Do you know what the biggest excuse to party in the Bible is? It says this, it says, when one sinner repents, there is great rejoicing in heaven. That's religious language for a party. All of heaven parties when people give their life to Him. Now, if it's that important that God and Jesus and most of the angels, except the ones that are on earthly duty, have parties when people come to Jesus, surely that's an indication of the priority of God for unsaved people. If God throws a party when each one gets saved, surely we should catch on to that and say, hey, this is the best reason in the world to celebrate people coming to Christ. And in fact, the whole of our culture, and this is where I talk about excellence, that's the link to excellence, is bringing people to Jesus. And there's nothing more excellent than Jesus. And unless we can focus our values and our cultures and find that there is something worth fighting for, there is something worth setting out for, there is some reason for bringing us together, and it culminates in celebration, celebrating people won for Christ. Nearly done, and I'm well ahead of time, which is a surprise. And it's this. And it says that we just need to find the heart of God. And the heart of God is in salvation. If everything we do is geared to that, we'll find the heart of God. You know, it talks about penalties for people who don't answer the trumpet call. And I don't want to get legalistic, and I don't want to get people feeling negative. Very quickly it says people are under a curse. Now I'm not preaching curses. Oh, if you don't do this, you're under a curse. No. I just want us to think about it this way. That if we don't answer the trumpet call, we will not be under the blessings that God has for us. And that really is a curse. All that God has for you and me, if we don't answer the call of God, we're not going to see it. And my heart is that each one of us, as a church, as a group, but also as individuals, see all that God has planned for life. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. For those that you know the programme, it's that moment on Bullseye, the darts quiz. I'll show a video of it. For those that don't know, I'll show you a quiz. And they build this up and they ask them if they want to go for the star prize. And they've got to get 101 in 6 darts. And often there's a dart player who can get about 80. And there's a non-dart player who can't even hit the board. You know, just hits the bloke who's commentating in the head and it all goes. And they don't get the 101. And the host, who's a man named Jim Bowen, he's very, you know, he puts his arms around him. They've lost £100 they won in the quiz earlier. They've won all the prizes they had on the prize board. And they've lost everything. He puts his hand around him and he said, let me show you what you could have won. And the curtain's open and there's a speedboat or there's a holiday or there's a car. And so these people have lost everything and they're like weeping. And this is what you could have won. And I often say this is like heaven. I believe that the part of the judgment of God for some of us will be, and I'm determined not to let it happen to me or to anyone in our church, that we get up there and we stand in front of God and God says, you're saved, you're in heaven, but hey, look what you could have won. Look what could have happened in your life. Look at these things that could have happened, but we missed the target. The second part of the penalty is exile. It says cut them off from the people. Now we're not going to excommunicate or ostracise anybody, send you to Coventry, whatever you want to call it. But actually what does happen, if we miss the call of God, we end up on our own sometimes. Yeah. We end up out of fellowship. We end up not pursuing the things of God. We end up, when the battle's happening, we stay at home. We watch Coronation Street instead. When there's a party, a celebration, we don't want to go because we just don't feel part of what's going on. We don't feel as if we can celebrate because we weren't part of that victory. And it's not that we push people away, but if we don't follow the purposes of God, we end up on our own. And it's not God's heart. God's word is He sets the lonely in families. God's heart is for community, for family. That's why He designed the church as He did. He designed the things for the people of Israel like He did. Because it's part of community, it's part of family. And that's God's intention for us. So are we really serious about building community? Are we really serious as we look at those 4 trumpets? Sorry, those 4 different reasons why the trumpets were used. It's spiritually, I'm not going to do it because it will be kind of spooky and contrived, and I don't like that. But if I was to say, shut all your eyes and let's listen carefully to see if we can hear a trumpet. Listen to see what we... It would be contrived, but just imagine what if we heard almost the audible calling of God to us as a congregation. What would we do? Well, we've got to do this before we can go. We've got to do that. I believe God is calling us to bigger and better. God is calling His people to battle. And we need to be prepared. God is calling His people to be prepared to uproot and set out to pursue His plans and purposes. God is calling us together to build His house. God is calling us together to celebrate the goodness of our God. But are we ready to answer the call? Whatever the cost to us, whatever the cost to our comfort, to how we feel, what we want, are we prepared to say, God, if you call, I will answer? Last story and I'm done. When I was in Kenya, Englishmen in Kenya, in Africa in general, you tend to learn things. You have a perspective when you go, and it's changed when you come back. I was asked to go to a praise and worship revival meeting. Love it. So I said, what time does it start? 10 o'clock. What time does it finish? Well, when it finishes. Okay. And that was true. It kind of went on for 4 hours. So I got there at 10 o'clock, and there was me, and there was a guy with a microphone in his hand, and the speakers, and there was a keyboard. That was it. 10 o'clock, nobody else. So, much to my surprise, this guy at 10 o'clock gets on the keyboard with his microphone and starts singing. Now, I'm the only one here. I'm the only one there. So I'm thinking, I've got to sing and clap, haven't I? Because I'm the only one. But I thought, this is a really funny way to go about things. In my English mindset, this is not good. Nobody's here on time. And I'm on my own clapping and singing songs. So I'm singing and clapping. And over the first hour, people start drifting in. And when the hour's, it's rocking. The place is going nuts. And we're preaching 4 hours. God turned up. Fantastic. But, you know, from the English mindset, I'm looking at this because Sean Kenny probably knows what I'm saying. I thought, well, in England, we have it all, you know, and people set up and people arriving. And so I went out to a visit later on, a guy called Charles. Charles was a twin. He was an elder of the church, great man. And he showed me where he was living. And when we think we've got it tough, the hardship he was living under was extraordinary. And yet, did I hear him complain? No. Did I see the kids unhappy, asking for a PlayStation game? No. They loved life, they loved being together. And I thought, wow, there's a lesson here. But as we were sitting, I was drinking this stuff, and I don't know what it's called, and I looked at this for some guidance. It was like a rough semolina type thing, with chocolate made into a drink and put in a flask. And when they poured it out, it was thick. It was like chocolate porridge, only drinkable, and chewy at the same time. It was amazing stuff, it was really nice. And I don't know what it was. But I'm drinking this stuff anyway. And it was one of those times when they said, do you want another? And I'm just drinking. And it's growing inside me. It's growing inside me. I'm sitting there talking to him about all sorts of things and being impressed by this man's commitment to God, not complaining, working when he could to support his family. And suddenly I heard a voice in a keyboard singing songs. And Charles looked at me and he said, do you hear that? And I said, yeah, it's the church, it's the praise and worship leader. And he said, that is the call to go to the house of God. Put down everything And off we went. I realised, hold on a minute. 10 o'clock was not when the meeting started. That was when the call to the house of God came. And that's why the guy was playing so loud for one person. Because it wasn't for me. It was for the people outside. And there wasn't a prayer chain or a text thing that says it's time to go to church. As soon as they heard the name of the Lord being sung and praised, whatever they were doing, they put it down. It's time to go to the house of the Lord. In fact, people who did go to the church, they thought, it's time to go to the house of the Lord. It was a call. And in my Western mentality, I was like, well, if it starts at 10, people should be here at 10. But it wasn't. And there was something so marvellous about this call to prayer across the whole village and the surrounding town, that when they heard God worship, it's time to go to the house of the Lord. People would drag kids, sometimes they were even their own, they dragged them into the house of God. And it taught me something that day. And it's the point of what we're doing today. Is if we make a joyful noise to the Lord, if we sound the celebration, if we sound the trumpet that says there is a God alive in PICC today, people in the community will hear it and they will come. Amen. But we need to sound it. We need to sound it. In my English mentality, if that was me, I'd have stood at the keyboard, turned the volume down and just had a little praise party all of my own, in embarrassment. But actually these guys knew, if we magnify the name of the Lord, people will come. Amen. If we make a loud enough noise in our community, people will come into the house of God. When people hear there's healing in the house of God, they will come. When they hear there's salvation in the house of God, they will come. When they hear there's friendship, relationship, there's battles being won, they're going to come. When they hear that the people are following the will and purposes of God, they will come. When they hear they are gathering together to build something that glorifies the name of Jesus, they will come. And when they hear that they are going to celebrate the name of Jesus Christ, they will come. Amen. But we've got to sound that trumpet. We've got to answer the call. Are we prepared to do that today? Let's just bow our heads. Lord, although I'm not going to give an appeal that's going to bring people out to the front, I'm not even going to ask people to raise their hands today.